So, everyone, first of all, I'm sure some of us met in the morning on the Peacock Ballroom when we were doing the masterclass on ESG. And we are now segueing into a masterclass of social stock exchange. A lot of burning questions keep coming in that, what is this? What, why, how, right? What is this? Why is this? And how am I going to reach there? So just before I get into the masterclass, I want to understand what sort of an audience I'm interacting with. English is an inclusive language for me. मैं हिंदी भी बोलता हूँ. So please feel free to interact with me in any language. And I understand we're a very diverse group. So how many of you are from the not-for-profit side? Trust, Section 8, society, most of you. How many of you are CSR heads? Or possibly family philanthropy office heads? Very few, okay. Academia, researchers? You could be an academia researcher plus a professional as well. Oh, that's it. So great. Again, the session when we were, drafting this deck, we had this in mind that who do we want to cater this to, and we understand that this conference, which CSR Box has put across, is a very apt platform, and thank you so much for the organizers to give us this opportunity so that we can decode, demystify the social stock exchange and take it forward from the experts who framed it. Sure. What is it? We're going to discuss the existing social funding ecosystem and gaps. What are the features of the social stock exchange? What are the different eligibility conditions and way forward and learnings? We've decoded the social stock exchange framework from the technical committee paper and the Gazette which came out, and some of our interactions with some of our clients, some of my ex-colleagues, Swamis, mentors, and basis that knowledge collection is what we've put together this comprehensive learning format. Sure. Great. What is this number? Can you tell me what does this number read to you? So, 205,000 crore rupees. Anyone? Thoughts? What is 205,000 crore rupees? If I put it under your bed, will it fit? Never. How many banks will I need to put that money in? No idea, right? Thoughts? Less, more? So, as on 2021, that's the pie of the social sector funding, if you see from a private funding point of view. We've left out the government. If you knock out the government, this is what the funding is available right now in the market. How much comes from CSR is just 24,000 crore rupees. Which came in FY21 was just 24,000 crore rupees. And a lot of the chunk is picked up by the retail, HNI, and the UHNI part, which then helps you guys reflect that while I can raise some of my money through a different avenue, say the CSR funding, I can go to the philanthropic foundations. What else can I do to access finance, right? Where else do I go? And that is what is the social stock exchange, an offering to organizations who probably can access finance in a much possible equitable way, a much robust way, and also gives you that credibility that, are we prepared enough to access this instrument? 12% was the annual growth in government spending of the GDP. 17.5 crores is, which is in sense more, sorry, I think it could be attended, is towards government spending and social causes. And 13% is the estimate spending of GDP to meet the UN SDGs. So you're all aware, right? 2030 is a commitment which we've taken to achieve our SDGs. So 13% is what we need to spend, but we are actually only spending 7%. Huge gap. How do we narrow this down? And this is where the gaps also come in. So who's on the funding side here today, if they would want to read the first bullet? Anyone who's come from the funding side? Please, if you could read this for me, and how many of you then resonate, could just tell me.
I'm apprehensive when it comes to funding organizations that do not have strong systems of reporting in place.
Sounds bells? Yeah? Okay. Anyone from there possible want to read the second emoticon? Are my funds being used in the right manner? Heard this before? Anyone from fundraising teams or organizations who go out to raise more money? Another funder perspective. Try to step into the shoes of the funder and just hear back those words. It's important for me to measure the social return associated with our grants. We've given you the money. How do I measure the return? Social return. Yeah. Who's from a social enterprise today? Who would want to read the first one? Try. Oh God, even I can't see her.
It's hard for us as a smaller NGO to drive awareness and gain the trust of corporate funders.
Come across these statements? Yeah. We have limited capacities and lack of structure for timely and proper reporting of project progress, fund utilization. I've got 10 crore rupees. Quarterly, I have to give them the spend and what has happened in the field. My M&E person is not able to report back. What do? Sorry. We need more people. Funders saying, no, we gave you 5%. Manage. Heard this? Yeah? Not a generalized statement. Some of the reflections. Lack of single window clearance makes it difficult for me to apply for government grants. I've tried other avenues, but it is not as easy as it looks. So these are certain challenges which you as social enterprises or you as grassroots level organizations or NGOs or civil society organizations go through. Do you agree with me for someone who are asking for funding? Do you guys agree with all this or you have a different perspective? Happy to maybe take some thoughts. And in fact, if you agree with me, you should give me a double clap. So I think this will help me visualize. A double clap, not a single clap. It's like going to be like that. Awesome. And whoever's on the funding side, do you also feel that while, yes, you have a mechanism to fund organizations, you have that appetite to give it to the organizations, but क्या वो उसको absorb करके आपको report कर सकते हैं वापस? Do you feel, whoever's from you could have even downstream partners who you would be funding to? Anyone? Possibly, I'm sure you want to express, maybe we'll pick it up offline, but yes, these are some of the reflections which we got possible when we were doing our interviews. So coming to the next topic, what is the social stock exchange and how is it going to add value, right? The first one is it's a pathway to achieve our 2030 SDG vision, which also brings in that additional infusion of funding. It also brings balance in proportion of funding sources. I might be eligible for a good CSR funding, but I am a private player. I'm doing my best. I'm going to low-income schools, but just because of my nature of incorporation, a CSR won't fund me. Their board might have apprehensions, right? So you can now also participate in this sector through this lens as a funding source. You're now reducing dependency on foreign funding, FCRA issues, governance issues, reporting. I have my country coming up with a fundraising instrument. Why should I now go to the foreign funds and probably get into that whole mess of opening a new bank account, reporting, and maybe get into that whole messy situation? Bring visibility to investors to the vast pool of NPOs. As and when the listing starts, investors will realize that, yes, this sector has strong corporate governance coming in. These NGOs are eligible. They've been vetted. They've gone through the SEBI scrutiny. So it's time we start also funding them. The third one will be to channelize the potential growth and sustainability of NPOs. Funds are drying up, not able to move ahead. It's time that there could be a recurring source of funding, even if one sort of donor moves out, you have some other source of fund to raise. And presenting a single unified investment from an investments perspective. The overall ecosystem, if you see, of the social stock exchange from an executive summary point of view will be consisting of the retail institutional investors, retail or institutional investors. People like me also can participate in the social stock exchange mechanism. There could be an institution who would come in and participate in the social stock exchange. SEBI, of course, will be the regulatory body. Then there'll be a listing of qualifying organizations, which could be then segmented into three parts. The for-profit entities, which is going to be raising money through an equity or a debt route. An NPO, which will raise money through a zero coupon, zero principal mutual funds, SVF. While the word SVF has been mentioned, if we look at the recent amendment or recent Gazette notification which had come from SEBI, the way to raise money through the stock exchange for an NPO only, which is a trust, Section 8, or a society, sorry, not a Section 8 trust, and a society, and a Section 8 as well, will either take the route of zero coupon, zero principal bonds, or they're going to go ahead and raise money through mutual funds or a development impact bond. So there are 3 open avenues where they would be able to raise money from. SVFs or pay for success models are some which were proposed in the technical committee, but however have not been institutionalized right now and are up for further amendments going forward. And a Section 8 company will be able to raise money through an equity and debt. Conventionally, legally, a Section 8 company can raise money, but will not be able to give back to its, will not be able to vest out its profits to its shareholders. So that is the legal framework which the SSE is proposing, and then there will be assessment and monitoring agencies who are going to also be called the social auditors, who are going to be qualified through the chartered accounting agencies, and even the list of social auditors. They are organizations who will have qualified professionals working in these organizations will call the social audit organizations. So if you're a chartered accountant, if you've done work in the sector, either you can participate in this mechanism as an individual, or if you have a firm, you can also participate as a social auditor capacity. An NPO and a Section 8. So ideally, NPOs can raise money through not-for-profit organizations. Yes. Trust, society are NPOs. Even Section 8 are NPOs. But Section 8 have been specifically given the equity and debt route. See, a not-for-profit is of 3 kinds: a trust, society, and a Section 8 company. A trust and a society have been allowed to raise money through a zero principal, zero coupon bond as per the notification. But a Section 8 right now will not be able to participate in this instrument. They will be able to raise money through equity and debt instruments.
So equity and debt is like similar to mutual fund or borrowing. A zero coupon, zero principal bond is essentially your donation that comes in with no expected return.
From you, ma'am?
There is no financial return. There is no financial return.
No financial.
One other clarification for people of my vintage, they will try and look at social auditors as social auditors who do the social auditing at the ground level. This is a different kind of social auditor. These are not the social auditors that come from a different way of working. Not easy. What is the difference? So maybe I think this was given. So there are social auditors who go ahead. There are social auditors who go ahead and use social auditing systems at the ground level in terms of going ahead. So if you look at health programs or the social audits of PHCs, Anganwadi workers, etc. So that's a different kind of a social audit. This is more from an auditing as in a financial audit kind of a person.
Hey, so I'm trying to wrap my head around social stock exchange versus like a DAF, because a DAF also kind of, the donor advice funds, also encapsulates all of this, right? In a way?
We've not looked at that model very holistically right now. Our focus here was to look at social stock exchange in entirety. Drawing comparisons of the SSE in India would be fair with the other global SSEs which have already been listed out. So Canada had one, Singapore had one. So that sort of a comparison would be more like an apple-to-apple comparison rather than looking at an alternative vehicle, funding vehicle. But the purpose of this session was to look at only social stock exchanges. So yeah, awesome. So, of course. So you would now also probably scratch your head and say, what is the difference between conventional stock exchange and the main social stock exchange? How many of you invest in stock exchange? What do you invest in? What instrument or asset do you invest in? Mutual fund, equity, derivatives, options, bonds, derivatives. So most of you, I am assuming, are familiar with how a conventional stock exchange works, where you sell and buy securities. It could be your debt, your shares is called equity, your mutual funds, futures and options, etc. There is a authentic stock exchange which is there, like a Bombay Stock Exchange or a National Stock Exchange. There's a stockbroker which helps the facilitation of it. Here, however, if you see on a conventional stock exchange, there is no listing of a trust society or a Section 8, right? There are only for-profit companies which become private limited who go public and raise money. But on the social stock exchange, your modalities and your legalities of the organization will change, and it will be a segmented target which will go and list on this. Here, the regulatory body will be SEBI in both ways. This is an initiative by SEBI itself. However, the NSE and BSE structure will be leveraged, which is already around. As we heard Hemant sir, he's also was the ex-CEO of BSE, who's also helping BSE to set up the first social stock exchange. There are around 23 stock exchanges in India. However, NSE and BSE are something we know. However, as SEBI set up a 15-member committee to set this up, so that was more from a setting up stage. And as we said, that listed companies do raise money and give out dividends. However, in this case, the companies, the NGOs will not be giving back any sort of financial returns. You're not paying out dividends. You will be only paying out social returns along with tax benefits as an incentive. Point to be noted, all instruments will not be giving out tax benefits. That's a proposition which has been told. So for example, a mutual fund instrument, which you'll see right now, which we'll give you as a case study, does have a provision to give out an ATG, where if I invest in a certain fund, I can get an ATG and probably set it off with the dividends I would have received or a return which I would have received. But on contrary, here, in a conventional fund, you would probably get a dividend. ZCZP, which will not give out any sort of dividends or return. So if you are raising a bond, point blank, it's a donation, but you could say it's the Apple of donation, like how it's the social currency, right? I have an Apple phone. So in the social sector, I'm raising a ZCZP, yeah, a social bond. And a DIB will have an internal rate of return, which we'll show you going forward. This is the ecosystem coming back again. If you have a close look at your NPOs, which are consisting of the larger pool of trust, Section 8 society. For-profit social enterprises, point to be noted, a lot of you I've met here are edtech companies, right? You're privately listed, but your intent is social. You go to a private school, probably a low-income private school, you go to a community school, your intent is there and you're serving an unserved market, and that is where you'll have to establish your cause and possibly be eligible for that funding. But when you're meeting a CSR donor, he's going to ask you first question, are you a trust society? Gone. He's walked off, right? Example, not being generalized. There are also investors from a social lens who are exploring that how can we further, incorporate that. You might say Byju's is a social is a social enterprise. It's educate. No, it's not. Right? There is a clear demarcation of what a social enterprise is, which has been further listed in the Gazette, which we'll show you ahead. A non-institutional investor is someone like us, a retail investor. At least I'm a non-institutional investor. I don't come from a house which has plenty of money, so whatever I earn, I can put it as a retail investor or an institutional investor. An institutional investor is a company which will invest on behalf of you, like how an investment bank is, right? How probably it picks up money and invests in a certain vehicle. SEBI is our regulatory body, which will be also the governing body towards the whole social stock exchange mechanism. Information repositories. Point to be noted, this again is a recommendation which even our esteemed panel members were talking. This has not been proposed in the Gazette right now. It is a work in progress. This will be more like a capacity building platform, which will have repositories, knowledge bank, a capacity fund possibly, where grassroots organizations or even emerging organizations or semi-mature organizations can go ahead and get capacitated on how to move further in the listing process or accessing finance. And a social auditor, which we spoke about when Sir asked us who is going to be a social auditor, will be registered self-regulatory organization under the ICAI. It should be an authorized social auditor who should be doing finance and non-financial auditing. So I'll give you our example, and I didn't start with that because it was in the interest of time. So Deloitte can be qualified as a social auditor because we as an organization have qualified chartered accountants who could look at the financial aspects. Plus, I won't call us social scientists, but adequately skilled people who could go to the field and also verify measurable outputs and indicators, measurable output indicators and impact to consolidate your financial and non-financial reporting on what has been the progress. So we'll have to be looked at that way from a social audit lens.
Most of the chartered accountants do not do the non-financial audit.
True.
As
Agreed.
per Institute of a chartered accountant, they are not supposed to bring back. They don't have any strength on non-financial audit. What about that?
So that is something which is not. So again,
Not Deloitte, the individuals.
agreed. But again, the Gazette is again very narrow-minded. That is something which they've not clarified as well. So for them to go ahead and do this work, they might have to broaden their horizon. Is what could be a possible recommendation. They might say कि अरे मेरे पास इतने करोड़ का business आ सकता है. क्या मैं अपनी capacities जाके build करूं? Can I go ahead and learn the art? Can I possibly employ some people who have that skill set and make it as a business case opportunity? At the end, it's a use case opportunity to drive the overall mechanism. But yes, SEBI is very clear who a social auditor is going to be. Yeah. Agreed. That's what I was answering, sir. That this is also this is also like a notification for them. So that's what I said. Deloitte or any of these big four agencies or any of the established consulting firms, if you see, will have a blend of professionals who are authorized by ICAI and also have trained professionals to do non-financial audits as well. So they will have to build their capacities in non-financial audits to go ahead and use it as a use case business to enter the segment. So it's a work in progress for them now. For us who are going to get audited, we don't need to care. The mandate is clear. In case you're doing a supplier evaluation, in case you're getting listed on the stock exchange and you feel that you're not a qualified social auditor, you'll reject them. So this is basically more like I would say not investor education, but a organizational education which you'll have to pick on.
Pratul, can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
In society and trust, there's a big gap. Every temple is a trust. Temple and education institutions are also non-profit. Are they going to list?
Yeah, they will.
One minute. There's another thing. Most of the trusts are promoted by the corporate. They are already funded. Are they also going to be listed?
So
Three categories. I think you are careful. One is a corporate promoting individual organization. The owner is promoting foundation. Second category, temple. All temples are a trust. Third, education institution. Are they going to be listed? I think these are there's a gray areas for trust and
while
not the Section 8 company is very clear.
Agree.
As per law. But trust and education, there is a big gap.
No. I'm hearing you, and there is a provision in the Gazette which says that politically affiliated and religious institutions will not be allowed to list. Education comes under the ambit of the 25 laid focus areas which they can. Now, if you're saying a religiously promoted education institute, now that is something which the due diligence has to find out if it has. So when you do a due diligence exercise, you need to understand that are my promotees or are the persons who are running the school, are they either politically inclined, religiously inclined? Because I'm sure I know where your examples are coming from. I understand. Yes. So that is something which your due diligence exercise will have to catch, and it's a catch-22, and it's a pure call of the donor. So there is no recommendation which is going to say the segment the way you've spoken, but it outlines a blanket by saying politically affiliated institutions along with social religious groups will not be allowed to list on the market. It says that. Okay, great. Coming to what are the instruments, now I'm going to talk about each instrument in detail. The first one has been proposed for the first time. The two other have already been tried and tested once. So we'll give you case studies for two, and one we'll explain you basis what has been emerged. And if you are a social enterprise, if you are a trust society, and if you are looking to list going forward, this is something which possibly you should not miss out in terms of grasping what the basics of it are. So overall, an NPO, as we said, can raise through a zero coupon, zero principal instrument, a mutual fund scheme, or any other means which has been specified. A for-profit will be able to raise money through equity and debt, as we spoke about, and there are more provisions to raise money for them. However, that has to be further instituted by the board. Right now, it's only equity and debt which has been proposed. Zero coupon, zero principle. What is the name, when you hear the name zero coupon, zero principle, and who's hearing this for the first time possibly, or have you guys read it before? Have you looked at a certain example? First time. Okay, and someone who's already gone through this? Anyone, or just could have upar se dekha hoga ki, "Arey, this is something which we can do." So when you read the word zero coupon, zero principle, what comes to your mind? Anyone, you can take a shot, you. क्या कौन सा कूपन है ये?
And you don't get the interest on that amount, principal amount.
Another name for donation is a very quirky term. Thank you. Yeah.
Is it like a debenture?
Debenture still has a certain return. It's a tax-saving instrument, but
May I?
rebates, interest. Focus on the word zero. Coupon, principal is on, but focus on the word zero.
Never mind.
I'll raise the money, but I'll not give you anything. I'm sorry, I'll give you only social returns. I'll give you an outcome. Easy language. I'll take 2 crores from you. I'll not give you any principal. I will not give you any, equity. I might call you for a field visit, but I'm not giving you any financial returns. So that's a clear outlay in terms of zero coupon, zero principal. This can only be issued to an NPO, which has to be allied to the list of eligible activities. Schedule 7 was very well defined in CSR. Social stock exchange has gone a little beyond Schedule 7. It has also included some of the areas which possibly Schedule 7 didn't outline very well, which were gray areas, but this has tried to look at broader access, which I'll also speak about later. Minimum issue size will be 1 crore. So you cannot raise money less than 1 crore if you're going for a ZCZP. So your appetite or your project plan should be 1 crore minimum. There is no upper cap. So if you're planning a 1-year project, 2-year project, 3-year project, you need to be very, very cognizant of the fact that what a bare minimum could be or what a max could be. That has not been issued right now. There is no expense mechanism which has been given. Right now, only the instrument structure has been provided. How much money it will charge, ye nahi bataya, but they have told that what is the wave.
Defining and showing that social return on income has been defined.
No, that is something which Ingrid was talking about the common indicator framework. Again, that is also work in progress. But like how you today, so you're from Magic Pass, right? You today pitch to your CSR donors by saying that X numbers will be trained by this. This will be the average income. Itne mein I'll follow them for placement for 6 months, 5 months.
Correct.
Post that, there could be a rise in family income. Their status could improve, right? You may stretch your imagination.
Correct.
1 year, 2 year, 3 year, that's your program design. So similarly, in a zero coupon, zero principle, when you are making your project design, you may say, I will teach 100 kids. I will provide access to so many, curriculum. I will give them so many sessions. But if you're also saying I'll improve 10% of their learning levels in numeracy in English, that has to be then measured and achieved to validate what you're saying. Outputs you will be able to do. Outcomes, how you will do is that is something which you'll have to, as an organization, be very clear. And that has to be vetted by a third party, obviously.
And what is the mechanism? Because we know that if I'm a retail investor,
Yeah.
I know that there is a mechanism of intermediaries or even direct to buy mutual funds or stock exchange through ICICI Direct and so many other.
Next slide.
What is the mechanism?
If we overall go in the process, I'm not saying all your, because see, even the Gazette, technical committee or your secondary interviews don't give you all the answers. This is a very work in progress document.
Okay, it's a work in progress.
It is not established. So you'll see things are evolving and right now it's just a proposed framework. So as an expert, we are trying to decode it. We are trying to make it simpler for you so that when this thing hits the road, you are adequately equipped with the basic terminologies. And then of course, there will be intermediaries going forward. Like in a mutual fund, there is an intermediary. There's an asset management company, like an HDFC, which will help you channelize your funds and probably give it only for skilling. It could be like the skilling mutual fund. Example, like how the cancer mutual fund will be.
Sorry.
This is a proposed framework. I would sort of bring your attention to what Ingrid talked about. It's proposed only to the extent that it's proposed, but it's going to be implemented. It's going to be upon us.
whether we like it or not, is going to be upon us. So it's good to sort of understand the framework today so that you have the right mechanisms to go ahead and navigate it going forward. Some of the lower level decisions that we are getting from the questions, some of them will need to be worked out. Some of them are work in progress where there is a certain way in which it's being thought through. To that extent, this is up to date in terms of getting that information.
Sure. Sorry to interfere. The zero coupon, what you are referring to, is it only the interest free, or are you going to return the principal amount later on? Is there any combination like that?
Nothing. You will only deliver social return, which is also measurable and quantifiable. You will not give out any sort of payback or donation funding. So that is a clear cut out in this. Given the plausibility of time, can we cut questions in the middle and possibly keep it for a couple of minutes later?
Just one small question, if I can, Pratul. Investment in a ZCZP for an individual investor can be a tax rebate under second ATC, or can be also a part of Schedule 7. If I as an investor...
Yes. So that's what I said. The list of activities will be
or,
Schedule 7 plus some additional activities. Now, Schedule 7 does not say bridge the digital divide. Does it say that? Add more mobile devices or make the country more technology equipped. But this Gazette says that. So it's Schedule 7 plus some of the complementing activities which possibly some of the leading for-profits, social enterprises might be doing, which... Yes, individual investor, but tax benefit right now has not been proposed in this. Yeah. Sure, sorry. Sure, and it should be minimum 75% subscribed. So if in an NGO you are raising the ZCZP, and if you don't have a subscription of 75%, then possibly your listing will not be allowed. So if I'm saying I am going ahead and raising 2 crore rupees, I will have to have minimum 75% of that fund coming from the subscription. And I'm not trying to compare it with an initial public offering. But you can interpret it in that ways that what is a subscription level, right? And the last one will be, it should be issued in a dematerialized form. So there will be a demat form which you will eventually get this bond in, where you can actively track the progress of the fund. And as the lower part says, while a conventional bond are debt instruments, you get an interest on the principal repayment when the bond matures. Here, when the bond matures, there will be no principal or no interest. And we'll have to be very, very clear on this, on the intent of it. What is the process going to be to go ahead when you look at a ZCZP listing? You first will be applying it through the draft fundraising document. It's going to be a comprehensive application list, again, which is not out in the market, but there will be a application list which will go ahead. You'll have to possibly pay a fees, and you'll have to seek an approval from SEBI to go ahead and list this entity. The DFRD, which is going to be the draft fundraising document, will be kept open for public comments for 21 days. So when you go ahead for IPO, usually you will see a red herring perspective, right? There's a detailed out and out in the public domain. Similarly, there'll be a 21-day detailed summary of what it is, and there will be public comments also open for it. What if people want to ask questions? How will you do this? How will you do that? Can be addressed. Then SSE will scrutinize your application, and within 30 days, they will revert back to you. Once you reincorporate all the suggestions, you will be allowed to go ahead and list the instrument. And this is again subject to 75% subscription. This will mature once your project gets over. So if it's a 1-year project, you end your project term, you've given your outcome, the bond will mature, and you will possibly get a notification on that. If it's a 3-year, so it's a 10-year based bond which you plan to go ahead and raise. Quickly going ahead in terms of what are the instruments in terms of the mutual fund. This is a tried and tested model. Here you can aggregate various funds through the intermediary, which is the asset management company. However, whatever funding which comes in has to be rooted to a social cause. So HDFC did a cancer fund, which I'm going to show you in the subsequent slide. But the part here is that investors who are giving in the donation amount in form of the bulk donation which they give out, they will not receive any dividends. They will receive a tax benefit in this. Here there will be a tax benefit. So whatever dividends you were supposed to get, you will possibly offset it with your ATG benefit going ahead. and claim it in your annual tax. So HDFC has done it. This is the example. Sir, we'll pick every clarification one because it's a bit of a race of a time. 3 years of duration. This is the tried and tested. It was the Cancer Cure Fund. 50,000 is the minimum investment which is put in and the donation goes to 5 lakhs per patient. So whatever amount they raise per patient, 5 lakhs is eligible who are going through a cancer treatment. Till now, since 2019, 137.41 crores have been raised through this instrument. And it's also available in the public domain. If you look at the quick screen, there is the institutional and non-institutional investor, someone who's like us, will give the principal to the mutual fund. The mutual fund then goes ahead and invests that money in some market instruments to earn that extra capital. When that extra capital comes, goes to the implementing partner, which is the Cancer Care Society, further which will disperse the money to the beneficiaries. And overall, if you see the impact of the fund is 94 patients, say it's grown to 7,469 patients in 2019, and it's still growing. So this is another alternative investment vehicle which social enterprise, which organizations can explore. Pay for success model, the third part, again, it's a tried and tested model. Here, the capital invested in NPOs is more beyond the conventional capital you put in. So if you would do a conventional CSR funding or you would do a conventional philanthropic funding, this has more of rigor. Here, there are returns expected, there are social verified outcomes expected, and there is a certain stop gate arrangement or a check dam arrangement which is made that if you don't achieve your social returns, you will not be paid. You achieve them, you will get paid. A good example will be the UBS Prime Educate Girls Bond. Who's heard of this instrument before? Anyone? Very few people. Okay. So UBS, this was India's first development impact bond. It was launched in 2015. It provided an upfront capital of $270,000 to the implementing partner, which was Educate Girls. So UBS was the risk investor, and this was not their CSR grant. It was an alternative funding vehicle which they had explored to create social impact. Educate Girls in Rajasthan was working on learning targets, enrollments, and even getting kids, getting girl child back to school, and they had committed a certain learning level improvement and enrollment to the donor. Now, the outcomes, which were 0.2 million children were reached, enrollment was improved, and learning levels were improved. These were not only claimed by Educate Girls, but they were verified. So ID Insight was a third-party evaluator which went ahead and verified these outcomes, gave out a report, an impact report, to your Children Investment Fund, CIF, which was also the outcome payer. So if the outcome could have not been given out, probably they would have gone ahead and paid back to UBS, but since the outcome was over and above, the 15, instead of 8% internal rate of return, 15% was paid out. So this has been a tried and tested model which has been used in the past and also will be up for some of the programs which have verified measurable return going forward. Quickly looking at eligibility conditions, primacy of social intent. That's rule number one. You don't have social intent at the backbone of your organization. You're not delivering any sort of social impact through your activities, you're not eligible. So that is the first thing you'll have to establish. Areas of intervention will be the 15 broad areas which are complemented in the Schedule 7 along with the priority areas identified by Niti Aayog. Activities. Now you are saying I'm a social enterprise, I am a social organization, I have intent, but how do I justify that? So 67% of your immediate proceedings of your 3 years of average revenues will have to come from the members of the target population. So in case if you are selling a service, you're a solar provider, your 67% of your income should come from the bottom of the pyramid. Your expenditure, if you're not charging any finance, if you're giving them funds, your 67% of your average expenditure of the past 3 years should be eligible for these social target groups. And members of the target population should constitute of your 67% of your beneficiaries. So if you have 100 beneficiaries, 67 beneficiaries should come from the target segment group, which are on the bottom of the pyramid. And as the target population says, it is the underserved, unserved communities and population which has not had equal access to different social goods which they require for development. As I spoke about the Schedule 7 activities, and there are some extra activities which we are doing. So promotion of financial inclusion, while we would do a lot of livelihood programs, SHG work, but microfinance, for instance, is an activity which is not outright funded by CSR or by anything. So microfinance can go ahead and raise money through this instrument, right? Facilitating access to land and property assets, helping them enable to access better living opportunities, slum area development, affordable housing. These are elements which are now going to be going ahead and list here. Bridging the digital divide and internet. So if you're looking at, say, a program which wants to penetrate deep into the villages, you want to do online learning, you want to go ahead and deploy edtech solutions. These are private companies which, with that social intent, can go ahead and raise money. Yeah. I think we can skip this. In the end, what is going to be the value addition? From an investor point of view, an investor will have more confidence in investing into organizations, given that they will be vetted by the SEBI framework. There will be more robust reporting. Basically, the investor confidence will grow once the exchange mechanism comes in. Triple bottom line is going to address standardized impact measurement are going to come out, which will help investors take definite actions. Government is going to really benefit from this framework, given that it's complementing the larger need of achieving the sustainable development goals. And eventually, it's the investee needs, which are basically fundraising challenges. So at the end of the day, it's all about accessing newer ways to capital. So visibility, accreditation, linkage, standardization, equitable opportunities are the key takeaways from this. These are some of the SSCs which were, in the past implemented. However, they were not as comprehensive. We've tried to look at some of these models. They didn't work as well as they were expected to. India, no doubt, is quite a mature market. CSR is predominant already. A lot of comments came in that, how will CSR money be looked like? CSR will move as is, because that is something which has been defined under MCA. But this as a separate structure is going to be, which has been much better defined, which has defined ways to raise money. And this is not going to be only limited to the rich philanthropic institutions who could just fund. Even people like you and me can participate in this market. Yeah? What can we learn from the existing SSC framework? So if you see, UK, Canada, Portugal, Singapore, Jamaica, Brazil, and South Africa had actually gone ahead and set up these social stock exchanges, but only Canada, Singapore, and Sure. So NSE, BSE are two, one of the most well-established, well-managed stock exchanges which we have in our country, and they will provide that level playing ground for the SSE as well. With the whole concept of the capacities, the repositories which are going to be built, it is going to be fairly easy for some of our grassroots organizations to go ahead and get capacitated. If the capacity building fund comes out for that 100 crores, it will give an avenue to the smaller organizations or even matured organizations to go ahead and capacitate themselves to go and list on the stock exchange. However, where we need to learn from some of the other stock exchanges is that how do we improve our investor education? Some of the stock exchanges which were set up failed to connect to the common person, failed to communicate what the intent of this whole mechanism. Similarly, how we see ads of SIPs every day, mutual funds of every day, it is imperative that SEBI or the stock exchanges or the investment channels go ahead and create roadshows, go ahead and create awareness, like how we are doing a masterclass, possibly have a wider reach to the common man, the institutional investors, or the retail investors to go ahead and participate in the market. Also, there will be a lot of revenue challenges were faced by the other SSEs. So to operate a system, you need money, right? At the end of the day, you're going to list the organizations, you're going to facilitate certain services for them. But the other SSEs in abroad were only dependent on philanthropic funding. They did not have much provisions from the government. But in India, comparatively, SEBI has taken the task of setting this up. Experts have been brought in, and possibly government might have to initially step in and fund some of the SSE mechanisms so that the ecosystem continues. Possibly some of the NGOs might have to be supported to get listed based on what the listing charges would be. So these are certain elements which we think from a recommendations point of view to strengthen this ecosystem is. And overall, as we said, this is a work in progress document. While some of the things will go live, there will be things which will evolve. So keep watching out on some of the notifications which come out. Possibly there will be another committee which will go ahead and formalize this. But all in all, for now, 3 instruments are something which you'll have to be aware of. And where do you see yourself playing in that ecosystem? Would you want to go for a ZCZP? Would you want to raise a mutual fund? Would you want to go ahead and look at a pay for success model? So a good way to end this class would be to reflect on how your social business models or social enterprises or how your programs are structured, and where do you think you can position yourself in case you're looking to raise additional capital. Thank you so much.
I think that was
Pratul, 2 quick questions. 2 quick questions. Is there a minimum duration of the project in zero cap zero principle? Minimum duration of the project? No, nothing as such.
No.
Okay. Second quick question. Did HDFC collaborate with an exclusive NGO partner and rolled out the Cancer Mutual Fund?
India Cancer Society.
So it was an exclusive partnership?
Yes.
Okay.
So there has to be a defined implementing partner. So 2020 is when the committee had sat. 2022, I think by July we had the Gazette notification, which took around 2 years to formalize this. Possibly by the next budget speech we should have it. It's an anticipated guess from my end, given that it was announced in the union budget. So let's see if possibly by March 2023 we can have this rolling out. CSR has moved very fast, if you see, right? The amendments have come in very quickly. So on the similar lines, we see that, again, I'm not privy to any conversations. It's just we are looking at a trend that how possibly notifications move. But I think it should be a budget to budget move is what we are anticipating. CSR in itself as defined is an ecosystem which has been created. That's an MCA requirement. Because there's a Schedule 7 defined, there's an implementation modality defined in it. So but if they wish to participate in an alternative funding mechanism, that's a call of their CSR committee, their leadership. The government will not mandate. For them, the 2% mandatory spend has to happen.
Yeah, one question.
Sir, there's
one question here.
Yeah, there's the person who helped you. Yeah. Ma'am, you've been raising your hand for quite some time. I would want you to post that.
Is it possible to raise fund for self-sustaining models? You want to set up PHCs and get people to pay for it, and you don't have infra infusion into it, because you said there's no return on it, right? It's social returns is the only returns. So assuming that community will take time to adopt to paying for healthcare service, is it possible to raise money for?
I'll take that. So example, if you have an expense of 100 rupees, right? You want to meet your expense 100 rupees, possibly 70 rupees might come from the community. You'll still need that 30 rupees, right? So you can raise that 30 rupees from the market. Yeah, that's if you're eligible for that ZCZP. So again, you'll have to justify your eligibility, as we spoke about, that 67% of your income, the ones you're charging, has to come from the underserved population. So that has to be very articulated. And again, it's up to you. So whenever we go for a IPO, I'm sorry I'm using the conventional stock market terms, but since you guys are all smart investors, I'm sure you've made a lot of money in the market. So, so whenever you go for an IPO, right, a red herring perspective is usually outlined to tell you where we are going to use your funds, right? Is it going to be, we're going to improve our capex, we are going to hire more people through it, we're going to expand technology. So similarly, in this case, when you do the DRFD, which is a draft fundraising document, you would have to possibly tell them that for what intent you're raising money, how much money you're raising, and how will you use it. So yes, 67% is the eligibility criteria for all the social enterprises, for-profit or not for-profit, to establish their primacy of intent. So 67% of your revenue has to come from the beneficiaries in case you're selling spectacles, right? So if you're earning 100 rupees, 67 rupees has to come from the underserved population. It could be community contribution, or it could be a village level contribution or an individual.
Yeah, Pratul and Swami, yeah.
I understand we all have a lot of questions, but we'll go around the room. Yeah.
Hi, so this is Christina from United Way, Mumbai. I have two questions. One is about the mutual funds and the HDFC example that was shared. So the component of investing in the market and generating additional capital, is there a timeline for it, to be able to turn it back to the organization? And the second question is with regard to the cash flow. Right now, we experience a lot of reimbursement kind of funding under CSR. So does the, how does the cash flow system work? Is it after all the funds are raised, they're disbursed to the partners, implementing partners, and then the project starts, or is it in milestone based?
Second part I'll answer is they've said 3 years average. So they will not look at an year-on-year balance sheet. So if you're applying in 21, they're going to look at 18, 19, 20. Yeah. So that answers your question. It's like how CSR expenditure is calculated. 3 years of your average net for profit, section 198, tax deducted, you get your 2%. Similarly, if you're looking at a United Way's balance sheet, I will look at your donations or your expenditures, which you've done for your community programs, as a 3 years net off. So that's where they've created that safety net. First question, cancer, right? You said what is the tenure? It depends what the mutual fund tenure is. Usually it's annual. So the money which the fund is getting. So AMC is an intermediary. Yeah. They will then set it off. They might buy a bond. They might invest in gold. They might look at any equity instrument. That's their call. But they have to look at an annuity sort of return for the implementation partner, as well as the tax certificate anyways will be given on an annual basis.
So before we go there, sir, yes. Gentleman next, followed by the lady here, and followed by the lady here, and then possibly. Sorry, sir, please, we'll need to get everyone involved in the room. So please allow me that liberty.
Thanks so much, Swami. I'm Ashwath Vaz from Inspire Institute of Sports. And the question is probably to both of you, because I'm trying to understand, do you all see any specific factors which makes you all so optimistic about the SSE working in India? I mean, it's clear from this slide, it's failed in more than 50% of the countries. I've studied the HDFC Cancer Fund in detail. The subscription is barely 100 odd crores, which is a fraction of the other mutual fund returns. I also tried implementing a mutual fund for children's education. I spoke to the senior levels of Deutsche, Barclays, name it, and I went to them. And the response was, we won't get any takers for this. Of course, I saw that, there are tax benefits coming now, which was not there for HDFC, and some things like that. But are there any specific reasons or factors that are making you also optimistic about this working for India?
Before I hand it over to Pratul for a more serious answer, we are consultants.
Yeah.
We sell optimism.
Yeah, that's one possibility.
No, so again, a lot of your question which is coming is also from an emotion point of view, right? That this thing didn't do well. I, as in a lot of our players in the ecosystem, tried hard to sell this product. It has not been accepted. True. This is anywhere. So instead, I was speaking to Swami yesterday. To sell any product or to push any agenda, there has to be a use case, right? It has to be a business case. In this case, if you see, and again, how we started this was, it's an additional way to make access capital. So today, if you, as an organization, are possibly when you went, did you go to all these banks before the stock exchange thing came up? Or before, but now have you spoken to him? Agreed. Agreed. So possibly if you have these conversations now, when the finance minister has made a public opinion on this, this thing is out in public, there are master classes happening, there are already top-notch experts speaking on this, SDGs is a hot agenda, ESG is hot. So now is when they're going to explore these avenues going forward. The emotion will remain consistent. I understand this sector to attract money does take some firefighting, but we are getting there. But I would really suggest we should exchange notes possibly when you meet them in the next year when this is formal. You never know your possible dream or my dream can come true. Yeah.
One way of looking at it is also to see that what is the maturity level that we are at. So there are certain things which I think have been in the idea stage for a long period of time, but you also look at in terms of what is the maturity level of the ecosystem as a whole, and is it ready to go ahead and start rolling it out. So for instance, when we look at the maturity level, we look for certain key things. What are the regulatory mechanisms up and running? Are there draft papers being issued by the central government? Is there a consistent follow-up from the central government or from the committees? Are gazette notifications being issued? Are there alternative investment funds being used and being channelized in the right manner? So if you look at it as a stack of things that are happening, then that's one of the reasons why we are also quite
Hi, my question, I'm considering here the worst case scenario. What if the organization is failed to deliver the outcomes? Like, because the money has gone, it has been implemented, it has been utilized on the ground. So what will happen then?
So possibly it depends on the instrument. Mutual fund does not have that that capacity. So mutual fund will not is not assuring you any social return. Pay for success model clear, you do not get additional funding unless and until you're not achieving your return. So your risk investments will get, of course, then your credibility goes down. ZC, ZP, you will not be able to mature your bond. So you'll have to end your project to mature that bond and get that nod from SEBI that yes, I'm done with my program, and we can close it. So. So in a ZC, ZP, it's a one-time money you'll raise. Anyways, you're going to raise money. So it's a time-based expenditure you'll have to make based on your command. Even if you're not able to do that, your bond will not mature. So possibly, going forward, your credibility will be questioned. Your relisting perspectives, your new ways to raise money will be challenged.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Pay for success, you anyways don't get the money.
Mr. Swaminathan, we can only take one more question.
Okay, so maybe we finish with this and then we can take it offline.
Yeah.
But just before ma'am, you ask your question, I just wanted to clarify one thing. As Ingrid was saying that zero coupon, zero principal bond is nothing more than a fancy name for a donation. Today you get donation and you look for a grant, and that grant is linked to a certain set of programmatic activities which is time boxed, either 3 years or 5 years, etc. So then you have a programmatic way of doing it. So the question that comes in is that if you already have a donation route and you have the trust and you have a society and you also get Section 8 companies into it, but right now it's trust in society as zero coupon, zero principal bonds. Why do we need this instrument? The reason why we need this instrument is that some of the critical transparency related questions related to donations come from the fact that how are you using it, right? So there are some mechanisms in terms of going ahead and opening a new bank account. It has to be an SBI and so on and so forth. But there is no common auditing mechanism by which your your donation is actually audited in terms of a financial, non-financial metric. Zero coupon, zero principal instrument allows for a third-party mandated standardized audit to be done there. That's the key critical difference. Then some of the questions that come to you saying that how did you use this fund, why is this fund being used in this particular way, either from the donor or from some of the agencies, are already tackled and taken care of. Ma'am.
Hello, I am Dr. Mukta Bakshi. I am a cancer surgeon myself. I am working already in private hospital. And I have set up a foundation which is a not-for-profit Section 8 company in 2014. So it's working till then. We are mainly working for cancer patients, for underprivileged education and disasters. So my question is, in this 67% you are saying that it should be underserved population. I myself have seen more than 5,000 patients in different areas in Delhi NCR and in mountain areas, free of cost, and I myself examined them for early detection of cancer. What my practical ground experience is, when we call underserved population or underprivileged population, what are the criteria? Because many I have seen that they are wasting their money on many other things, and when it comes to health, they say we are underprivileged, we are underserved, and actually they are having much more money than the middle class or the low middle class. So this is one thing which I will like, the laws should see that whom you are telling the underserved or underprivileged.
So that's a recommendation you're saying that the law should evaluate. Okay.
So then what I would do is that I'll just allow for one last question. I think the gentleman had a question.
Hi, my name is Vardharajan. I'm from Viva Development Strategies. My question is there any chance of this transcending and going from being an entity like NSE, BSE to actually becoming more like an open source framework, an underlying framework like UPI, ONDC, so that there are other organizations that can build on top of it?
So, possibly that's a way forward, you're right. But right now, it's going to be housed under one of these two stock exchanges. So right now, what the proposition is, it is going to be housed in one of the stock exchanges, NSE, BSE. Way forward is if it matures, if it's able to reach a certain stage, possibly it can be demarketed as what you mentioned, like an ONDC or a UBI. But right now, there is no such provision of a separate entity. So possibly there'll be a cooling period. They're also going to run it at a pilot mode and see that how much investor traction is coming in, how much money is being generated through this. Because remember, CSR will always be hot, right? Because CSR is something which is accessible, well-defined, clear. It's the alternative vehicle which which organizations would themselves, be very keen to explore. Some might not. Even at a listing level, at an organization level, there will be significant investor education or organizational level education which has to be provided in order to ensure that this is a big success. So a lot of other SSEs have majoritarily failed because of lack of investor education and organizational education. Second, they did not have very clear investment instruments of listing. And third, they were largely dependent on philanthropic funding. So in India, that way the case is very different. We have a defined Schedule 7, we have a defined definition of what a FP is, what an NP is, and we have a few tried and tested models. So summarizing the overall framework, yeah.
Thanks. And from the point of, just a quick one, from the point of view of ONDC, right? ONDC comes at a certain level of maturity where it looks for interoperability between Amazons of the world, etc., right? So it's almost like, let's not go ahead and create a siloed monopoly approach. So ONDC comes at a certain platform thinking level. Exactly. So there has to be an UPI equivalent, but these are baby steps. But it's a fantastic question.
Great. So thank you so much. It was lovely interacting with you. We hope we become advisors to some of you going forward and helping you list possibly. Don't know. But I think thanks so much for being patient. I think we are on the brim of lunch. And great questions, hot burning points, a lot of way forward ideas coming out. So thank you so much. I think we thoroughly enjoyed the session.